Of course, we're drawing with charcoal today, and I love that saying, fake it till you make it. There's something about a confident drawing, even if it's a bit out, a bit quirky, if you don't think it looks good, all of that sort of thing. But there's something about confidence which belies your actual ability. Most people are more able than they think they are. They're very, very judgmental of what they're doing. And that fake it till you make it, one thing that charcoal does is it gives you such a lovely mark on your page that it looks like you know what you're doing. So we're going to be drawing a portrait. Okay, so this is willow charcoal, and it is made from the twigs of a willow tree. Actually, in the States it's called vine charcoal, and you can actually see by the fact that this isn't straight, it's got little knots on it. These are big pieces here. There's a little knot there. I don't think you can actually see it. So the advantage of, or the attribute of willow charcoal is that it's very soft, all this grayish kind of effect, and you get lots of dust off it. So we are going to be using willow charcoal today. I do like the way it is malleable and you can move it around with your finger. Not that I tend to use it with my finger. You can use an ordinary eraser to get back in and do some marks. I'm not going to do this overly much because I do have a separate video on mark making with charcoal, but I just wanted to show you what we're using today. We will also be using a kneadable eraser, and so that let me just put some more charcoal down. The kneadable eraser you can mold into a thin wedge. It's not very helpful to just have a little bit like that and go dab, 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 because that's a very weak point. So if I want to draw a thin line, I make a thin ridge, and then I can put it across like that. For those that don't know, this is called kneadable because you actually knead it. This is quite a clean one, but you'll see if I do that, that's picked up a whole lot of the black dirt, the black charcoal, and I have to knead that away if I want to use a fresh bit of the eraser, and then I can come back and use it. So a couple more things that we're going to be using. If you have a charcoal pencil, you will see that there are various grades. This one is a medium, and you can get hard, so pretty much like your ordinary graphite pencils. The difference between this charcoal and the willow charcoal is that this is called compressed charcoal. It has to be compressed to be able to go inside the pencil. Obviously you can get compressed charcoal in sticks as well, and you will see that that leaves you with a much blacker line. It is not as easy to move as your willow charcoal. In fact, that's very, very smudged. And if I try and, okay, so it's a little bit easier with the white eraser, which is no longer white. But I won't be using this, I don't think. I might change my mind, but I might be using a pencil to bring in some finer details right at the end. And the other thing that I may or may not use is a white charcoal. This actually says tinted charcoal. You can get tinted charcoal in various colors. Obviously, white charcoal sounds a bit odd, but it is called charcoal. It's basically a pastel. Depends on how hard that is, and we might use that white later again to bring back a white that isn't working very well there. So it's quite difficult to put a light over a dark. So we'll see how we go. This is particularly hard. You can get them in stick form, and that is sometimes softer. So any of your compressed charcoals, whether it's white or black, comes in different hardnesses. So that's the materials that we are going to use. So I'm going to take my scratchings away and come back with my page. Now, I did mention in the email that we're going to be drawing a black and white photograph, and I've got Jennifer Garner written there because it was a black and white photograph that I got off the internet. But what we are going to do to start off, and this is the technique I mentioned in my email that is going to give us a really good form, three-dimensional form to the head. And if you've met me before and been in my classes before, you will know that the way to get three-dimensional form is with light and shade. And the thing about putting down a base like this, a mid-tone, is that you automatically have got a shade on there already, and so to go darker you have to actually go darker than that. You can grab a tissue if you want and smudge that in a little bit. I would not suggest you smudging it completely because we don't want to fill up the tooth. We just want something in the background. Now, the other reason we do this is that we're not so scared to have our white paper underneath, and we've already destroyed it, so to speak, so let's go ahead and destroy it some more. Dare to stuff it up, you know that's one of my favorite sayings. We have got 12 people on board. Wow, I think that's a record. Hello Anna, pleased to see you here. Let's get started. Let's see, I'm not sure if I actually have got enough dark on there. Oh, I've got an ice cream van playing green sleeves coming down the road. I've decided that I want to go a little bit darker before I start. Okay, let's see this image of Madame Ghana. And if I go to my Photoshop, I am so pleased with myself that I have got these things working. So you can see there's Jennifer Garner, and we are going to, on our grey piece of paper, you can see first of all the background here is grey. We're actually going to be taking out some lights first. So it's a bit of a backwards, if you will, a backwards way of doing things, but it actually transforms everything so that we can see it straight away. We can see what we're doing. And now I'm going to go, this is only so that I can show off my pretty things. Okay, so there we are. We're going to, I'll just move that over a little bit. There you go. So you can see my paper and the photograph that I'm using. And I am actually looking at the photograph off the screen. I haven't got the photograph in front of me. I'm going to move this out the way because that is actually compressed charcoal, but it looks like willow, and I know that I'm going to pick that up if I don't move it out the way. So what I'm actually going to start with is my eraser, and this is 2 erasers stuck together. So I'm going to go back to 1. Charcoal is very, very forgiving, which means you can do lots of things with it and then correct it. And I am looking at, I guess you could call them the negative shapes. I'm looking at the lights on Jennifer, should we call her Jenny, on Jennifer's face. And I'm literally cleaning off where the lights are going to be. And if you are arbitrarily looking at these shapes, not as if they're chins and cheeks, and you're just looking at that negative shape, it will help you to put down the image. Now, if you go overboard by mistake, it actually doesn't matter. This is all about adjusting, as you know. So I promise you it was deliberate. There, I'll be even more deliberate. I've gone too far over. So now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to put some more grey down. And so you can do this to your heart's content. But we're not going to actually get that fussy right now, because we've got a long way to go. Thank you, Brian. Nice to know my technology is working really well. That is lovely. I'm thoroughly enjoying my technology, and I'm glad it's working well. So you're not watching my lip syncing going bad. Okay, so I'm going across there. What else am I going to do? I'm actually going to put the whites of her eye in a little bit. Now, you'll know that I don't believe in whites of the eye being white, but they are definitely lighter, and I can see that my proportions are probably a little bit out, and I haven't got room to put her neck. This is just a demonstration video. I'm not going to be finishing this whole portrait. It would take me way too long, but it is the technique that I'm interested in showing you. Okay, so once you have got your basic lights down, that doesn't mean we're not going to come back in and put some lights. I want to put a darker shade of tone in. Now, so I would suggest that that's number 2 tone. We are not going to be able to get back to number 1. The dark side of her hair is number 5, and the side of her cheek here is number 5. I would say that's about a number, or our background that we've put down is probably a 3, and it's going down or up to a 3 or 4 there. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about with my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you need to go and look at my tonal, my video on tonal values and the tonal tool. So I'm actually probably drawing a little bit too detailed there. I'm just at the moment putting in some rough places as to where things are. I am not trying to draw perfectly just yet, or ever for that matter. I haven't given her enough cheek over there, so I'm going to get my razor. Can you see that she seems to have a bit of a pixie cheek, but a pixie chin, sorry, but we do still have to get enough distance between her mouth and the side of her face. So don't expect great portrait skills here. I am just teaching you the technique. That's my excuse anyway. Okay, her lid actually cuts across the iris. I like to put that circle in because then I can cut across with the lid, because of course we can't see the whole iris. So I am just placing where I think these bits are. I am not, as I said before, I am not drawing the features as per her proportions necessarily at the moment. Well, no, actually they are her proportions, but I'm not looking for a likeness at the moment. I'm just establishing the shape, and you can see that I've put the features in before I put the whole shape of the head. And as usual, I'm getting a long portrait, which is quite normal. One of the reasons is because my work is flat instead of on my board, on my lap, which I do like to do, so that I can see the portrait properly. But the other reason is it's just my habit to do that. Now let's just see if her eye width is there, that goes down to her nose. I think her nose might be too long, which is a very, very common flaw. And if we put that there, and that's the top of her lip, we can probably pick her up a little bit. Yep, I usually find it's an eye width down to the nostril, top of the nostril, that is, and it's an eye width from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the mouth. So have we got a more or less decent shape there? Actually, if I look at the screen, I can see it perfectly. Okay, so this is, I see what I did wrong. That's better. Okay, so that's my general drawing at the moment. I can see that I've left too much space there on the side of her eye. So the reason I thought my head was too small was I hadn't included her hair there, I think. So I am actually going to bring it back to where it was. Okay, so the light that we left, that we took out, just enabled us to set up that head's shape. If I wanted to, I can actually come in with my white eraser and I can draw a bit more, or rub out a bit more, shall I say. She's definitely got a very good light on the side. Now, one of the things you will come to learn is that the light and the dark is only relative to how dark something is next to it. So at the moment, this doesn't look particularly light, but if I put that strong number 5 tone next to it, which is happening with on the side of her face there, that light now looks much more contrasted. So you can see that much better. It looks much lighter, and of course her hair comes in. Okay, so this is the steps towards doing the portrait. I am not going hell for leather into the features yet. I'm only looking at the shapes, dare I say, the shapes of tone. And hello Sarah, nice to join us. So the shapes of tone, that's all I'm looking at the moment, and I'm putting them in. I'm daring to put them in, even though some of them, like what I'm doing right now, is very, very dark. I want to have my parameters down so that I can see how dark number 5 is, how dark number 2 is, or number 1 if you want to call that number 1. That's our lightest light for this picture. And I want to clearly have those shapes set up. Now, she's on a tilt in that photograph. I have not given her that tilt, so I haven't paid attention to that. And that's a common error. So her eyes are actually like that. If we put a pencil down the middle of my picture, she's straight up. But if we put a pencil down the middle of the photograph, it would be like that. So that's a bit of an error. So on the side here, that looks vertical instead of slightly tilted. But I am going to carry on regardless, because I don't want to take that much more time than I need to. Okay, I'm actually blowing this. It's probably not a good idea, so I'm going to pick it up and bang that off. That's a much better idea for clearing the dust. Okay, there I've got my darkest dark and I've got my lightest light. Now I'd actually like to put down a more mid-tone. Oh, actually, yes, we did have our mid-tone from the beginning. So I've still got some mid-tone here, but I think I might emphasize some of it to get closer to a number 4 tone. And certainly across her side of her nose it's darker, so you can see I'm still not looking at the shapes. Oh no, apologies, I am still looking at the shapes of tone. I'm not looking at the shapes of the features. And you can see she's coming up without the features. Just to point out that I'm working, when I'm putting these tones down, I'm working with my charcoal on its side. Okay, if you work with it on its tip, you tend to get the lines are a bit harsh, and that's much stronger than I would want. So just using my fingers there to push it around a bit. And you'll notice, especially with cartridge paper, which is what I'm drawing on, that it gets to a point where it's taken enough charcoal. So putting the line down there and then smudging that in is one way of getting it slightly darker. Okay, I'm actually going to put the middle of her mouth in a little bit. So now that I've put down some of these basic tones, I am beginning to see, or beginning to hone in on some of the details. Okay, now I'm squinting my eyes to try and see those darks and lights. The top lip is in darkness generally, but it's not that dark on that side because the whole side of her face is in light. So I can use my kneadable, didn't rub it completely out, I just push the kneadable and lift it up, put some tone underneath. Can you see that she's looking a little bit, should we turn it that way? Turn my page that way. She is looking a little bit more 3D because of all these lines that we're putting on, sorry, not lines, but shapes of tone. Look how I've rounded that cheek. So I'm going to come back in with some charcoal and square that jaw off. She's got a very square jaw, and I'm going to take out some of that side of her head there. So charcoal is wonderful for doing this. Putting my dark back in, smudging it back. How's that? That's a little bit better. There, I'm fiddling a bit too much there. In fact, her chin is quite narrow, much more narrow than I gave it credit for. So I'll put dark there. And her neck is kind of going, looks like she's got mumps actually. Okay guys, as I said, I'm not actually going to finish the portrait. I just wanted to give you a heads up of how to go about doing it with this technique. So I am automatically putting the round eyeball in, or iris in, which is probably not a good idea, but I don't mind that I'm doing that because I know that I'm going to adjust it. And this piece of charcoal is getting a bit thick. It's got a nice little point on it though, which I might use, that's better, to do thinner lines. And you can see that there's a shadow right over there. There's a good shadow between her brow and her eye, and it's definitely cut off. Now there are paper stumps that you can get to blend this, which are a lot more sharp than your finger. I have not put one in my little collection here today because when I was getting ready I didn't think of it. Okay, but you can see that I've cut across her eye there, and this side has got much more light on it there, but it hasn't taken that long for us to get some form into the head, make it look a bit 3D. So I'm adding smaller definitions of dark to start getting her looking a bit more and more 3D. And you can see I'm going backwards and forwards between the charcoal and the kneadable eraser. So it's quite delicate on her nose there. She's got a shadow here. She's actually got a shadow, so the edge of her chin is not made by a line, it's made by a shadow. So I'm kind of blurring that line a little bit so that we can see the roundness of her chin. Ah, dear, dear, dear. You can see that I'm fiddling with the bits to get them right. It's difficult to get that chin right. Now that is quite a hard edge there, but it still shouldn't have that line. It should be the edge of a dark section like that. There's a very dark section of her hair coming down there, or in the shadow there, and it's kind of just blending into her neck. So I might take her neck up to her head, which might be a good idea. That will help. So even little smudges off like that don't help us particularly. Now, one thing that makes these heads look a bit more real as well is that little dot of light in her eyes. So I might be able to get that back just a little bit with my kneadable eraser. That's not very good, but I'm going to come with my pencil now and just highlight it like that. Does that work? That's a bit better. And over here you can see, okay, I actually can't see, oh, I can if I look hard enough. I was about to say I can't see her pupil, but it is buried in that dark. And now let's see if this white pencil will work. I have my doubts. That's actually not too bad. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, I keep saying that I'm not finishing it, but I'm really enjoying it. So I'm suggesting, this is when we come with our pencil, I'm giving a suggestion of the eyelashes there, the heaviness across the eyelid. That's actually more dark there, so I'm refining where the darks and lights are, and as I'm doing that you will see she becomes more and more lifelike. But you go from the large tonal areas to the smaller ones. There's a lovely light across the top of, that's called a philtrum, that section under the nose there. I could be fiddling. Oh, is my camera frozen? Looks like it's frozen to me. Can you? Ah, there we go. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is about it for today. I hope you like that technique. It sort of gets you going much quicker than trying to draw the whole head. she's definitely lopsided. Not quite sure what's gone on there. Something going wrong with that side. Quite definitely so. So I'm fiddle-faffing around here. But I think I should stop now.